What's permanent establishment? The concept of permanent establishment was developed to determine if an organization's activities in a country are taxable by local authorities. In other words, to determine if the organization has a taxable presence there. A business that performs activities that generate revenue or otherwise create value in another country is often said to trigger a permanent establishment, or a PE. If an organization triggers a PE, it will probably have to report and pay corporate taxes to local authorities. Unfortunately, a business can trigger a PE in another country without even knowing it's done so. If local authorities get wise, then penalties, interest, and reputational damage may follow. So, how do you know if you're in danger of triggering a permanent establishment in another country? First, be aware that PE is determined by local laws and any relevant double tax treaties. For example, a US-based company's activities in France will be deemed taxable or not by French authorities based on French law, including reference to the France-US tax treaty. Keep in mind that no country has tax treaties in place with every other country. In the absence of a treaty, local law will determine if an organization has triggered a PE. Tax treaties and country-specific tax legislation vary, but most contain similar principles related to permanent establishment. These principles are outlined in the OECD's Model Tax Convention, which says there are two primary ways to trigger a PE. The first is by maintaining a fixed place through which business is carried on in a country. Basically, a company will trigger a PE if it carries out business activities in an office, factory, or other physical space on an extended or recurrent basis. Typically, an activity that is preparatory or auxiliary in nature, such as conducting marketing research or gathering information, will not trigger a PE. The second primary way to trigger a PE is by hiring a dependent agent in a country. That is, by hiring someone who regularly concludes contracts on behalf of the organization. So much for the two primary ways of triggering a PE. Unfortunately for multinationals, PE laws are expanding to account for e-commerce, the provision of technical services across borders, and more. It's also critical to understand that PE determination is a notoriously gray area. Each PE determination requires applying relevant laws to a unique set of circumstances. Conducting intermittent business activities out of a home office may trigger a PE in one country, for example, but it may not trigger a PE in another. In short, there's almost always room for interpretation when making PE determinations. A company expanding abroad that doesn't seek expert guidance runs the risk of making a PE-related judgment that differs from that of the local tax authority. For more information, download Radius's Permanent Establishment Playbook: what PE is, how it's changing, and how to protect your organization.